This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Okay. So let's start with some interesting topic today. Let's talk about virtual machines. How many of you actually heard about virtual machine or know the concept? What is a virtual machine and why it is really required? Anyone?
See, virtual
Heard about the
machine
virtual
is
machine? Yeah, yeah,
yes,
please go
yes.
ahead.
Virtual machine is a mission and is a logical machine where we can install or operate. Like it will work as a physical machine, and yeah, we're installing a complete operating system, and on top of that, we're going to install necessary applications, whatever we need.
Yeah,
Simply, you can say that
perfect.
it will equal to physical mission, but it's not a physical mission.
Exactly. Yes, that's correct. So, what is the difference between physical machine and a virtual machine, right? When we talk about physical virtual machine and the virtual machine, why we really require this kind of thing, right? I'll just give you a brief about this thing because this is very, very crucial. Whenever you are going for any kind of interview or whenever someone is going, I think the first question they will ask you about virtual machine. What do you think is a virtual machine? Today, 90% of our applications are actually work running, or you can say 100% of our applications are running on the virtual machines because now we have that isolation and the virtualization which is really going top of that one. So if I go back 20 years, right, maybe when IT actually started, we had a concept like a physical machine, physical server, because right now if I give you a very high level thing, right, and that's, I think we are discussing it multiple times, that you have eventually what you want an application which is running, and this application is exposed to internet and a user can connect to this application, as simple as that, right? As a user, my requirement is to just to connect to a website, facebook.com or youtube.com, and start watching or start getting the services whatever is provided by this application, as simple as that. Now as a user, I don't care whether that application is really running on virtual machine or physical machine or anywhere in the world. I don't care because I just using that one. But as a developer or as a DevOps engineer, okay, this is really important for me to understand how this mechanism really works out, because I'm not a user, I'm a DevOps engineer who is responsible for ensuring that this application is continuously running. Okay, so my user experience or user will not have any problem, because the moment your user will have problem, your application will go down. Correct? As simple as that. Like if FB is down, continuously having a performance issues, continuously giving you problems for uploading your videos or something, you will stop using that particular service, right? And then in 1 day or 2 days, people will kind of like, just start getting rid of that particular application. So it's an impact. So user experience is very, very important for any application which is currently online. Okay, now when we walk back about, okay, we understand that, okay, user experience is important, so we have to sure that application is working fine. Now earlier, okay, when we started this overall journey of the server and all, that time we were having a physical machine. Now on top that physical machine, whenever we are kind of like implementing anything, you definitely need something like operating system. It's same like you have your Windows operating system or Linux or anything whatever you really going with. Okay, now on top of this operating system, generally what happens, you either have a choice that you can go either a Linux or Windows. Okay, you might be wondering that, okay, I can have a Linux and Windows on my on my laptop, for example, but again, you can only boot up one time. You cannot have, Linux and Windows working parallelly on that particular system. That's not possible. You cannot really do that. And then on top of this, you had to run really something like a web application. Okay, now this web application is also depend on which operating system you are really going with, right? If you are installing, if you are going with the Linux operating system, generally you user people go with Nginx or Apache. These are some of the very popular web application, web services. Or if you have something like a in Windows, then you have a IaaS, Internet Information Server, right? So these are some of the things which we really go with, and that is how companies kind of install the application. But the challenge with this approach is that if I have this method, I have only limited choices. So say like if I have one physical server, okay, and this one physical server is having a good capacity, say like I'm having a capacity of you know capacity of select 10 CPUs or maybe 4 CPUs. I'm just saying, let's do 10. That's good. 10 CPU plus I have say like 100 GB of RAM. Okay, 100 GB of RAM. Now this is a server configuration. This is a physical system, right? And that's the same thing which we are also seeing whenever you go for buying a laptop or a mobile phone. Nowadays we always go for the hardware configuration. That what is my hardware configuration? In my mobile phone I always go for what is my RAM, how much space I really have, what is my core, CPU core and all. And similarly we go for a laptop, right? Whenever you go for laptop, you definitely look for a RAM, again CPU and hard drive, because those are the main core component of your system. And that depends on the higher you go, the higher performance you really get. And again, it's again depends on the usage. If you are a normal student, you go for a normal i3 processor sign kind of thing. If you are definitely a developer, you will go for i7 or i5 and with like 16 GB of RAM and all those things. It's all depend on the use case. Now when we started with this particular journey, okay, that time there was one fundamental issue, is that if I'm having my application, okay, I have to really kind of like first of all buy this hardware and run only one application. As a application owner or as a company owner, it is really difficult for me to buy one big hardware for just one application, and that too I'm not sure whether that application will grow or not. Correct? Because this is my you can say this is my investment which I have really to need to do upfront. This is my capex. In a business terms, there is a concept like a capex and opex. Anyone knows about this capex and opex? Capex is a capital expenditure and opex is a operating expenditure. Now when we talk about capex is capital is something which if you want to start any business, you have to have actually a capital, right? Some amount which you will be kind of like starting your business for. And then operating, the opex is like operating expenditure, which is recurring thing, which is having your monthly bills or something like that, right? For example, when you go for any kind of a office, you want to start a office, you first take a office furniture, and maybe you have to do some kind of a purchasing of laptops and all those things. And you will either buy a property or you will rent, take that on a rent, and then you will have to really pay the deposits and all. So all this deposit, furniture, the beautification of everything, the advertisement, the initial advertisement, and everything whatever you will be spending initially, okay, to open your bank account and everything, that's a capital. And then after that, once you start hiring people or once you start putting up the monthly bills, definitely that will become your operating expenditure. So people, in case if I want to really start an IT company and if I want to deploy any application, definitely I have to start with the physical server, because without that, where I can really host my application? And this is, I'm talking about 20 years back, what really happens now. To avoid this situation, what companies really came up with an approach saying that you have one hardware, which is fine. Okay, is there any option actually, because I have only one operating system, is there any option I can actually create a virtualized layer and I can have multiple operating system on one physical server? Multiple operating system in one physical server, how is that possible? Yes, that's possible if we add one more layer between these, and then we actually add a new layer here, which we generally call it as a hypervisor. Okay? Now, what is this hypervisor? You might have heard about a technology or a tool name, which is a VMware, right? VMware or Hyper-V. So these are the, again, two technologies which actually came up, and again everything, right, guys? Understand, every technology comes with the requirement, and the requirement was that I am having just one physical server. How can I really make that in a more usable scenario where I can have multiple, because I'm not having just one application, I'm having multiple applications. So how can I really application again virtualized in a way that I can optimize this infrastructure in a better way. So for that, what they did, actually, they came up with a hypervisor. Now you got a choice that you can have a smaller virtual machines, okay, and you can now create a concept like on this hypervisor, you can really create a virtual machine. Okay. Now this virtual machine, again, you can create multiple virtual machines on top of this hypervisor, correct? But multiple virtual machine, and you can also make it depend on the shape and size of your application. Whatever application shape and size you want, you can actually map it accordingly. So you want a bigger virtual machine, yes, you can do the bigger one. Now why is that so? Because you have a limited physical capacity, you cannot go more than this. Okay. So as a planning, as an architect, what you have to do is, if my application one requires higher configuration, I will create a virtual machine which is having, say, like 6 CPU and maybe 50 GB of RAM or 60 GB of RAM, something like this. Okay. And then I'm creating one more virtual machine which is having, say, like 3 CPU and 3 GB of RAM or 30 GB of RAM. And then I will have one more CPU, one more virtual machine, which I am going to create one CPU, because that's the capacity only I can really have, and 100 GB of RAM. For example, I'm just giving a hypothetical. Definitely this can really go, because your hypervisor will also need to be, kind of like utilize something out of it. So you cannot 100% allocate this one, but I'm just assuming that 100% you are assuming here, right? Now this is the scenario. Again, when we go with this one, this is working fine, and the option and the advantage of having a virtual machine is that now you have a choice that you can have a Linux here, Windows here, and any other Linux flavor here, or a Windows flavor here, anything, whatever you want, any kind of a Linux or a Windows version, because Windows also comes with multiple versions, right? You have a Windows Server 2012, 18, 2019, 22, 26, like the multiple actually, which is really coming up. Same thing with Linux. You have Linux, Red Hat, Linux, Ubuntu, you have CentOS, you have, again, there are multiple versions actually of Linux which you can really do it. And again, depends on what you want, you can really deploy that one. And on top of that, again, when you are going with Linux, now you have a choice here. You can only go with Nginx, and here you can only have IaaS, and here you can have again something like IaaS, for example. Now, why is this important? Why is this IaaS and all this really important? Because once you have an application, if again, it's all depends on what technology you are using to program your application. Because here, if you have an application which is built up in a Java, okay, or .NET, these are the most two popular technologies nowadays, right? .NET and Java. Now what happened? Mostly whenever people goes with, because we are really, happy, or you can say very useful, usual, and then we are really kind of like, going all along with the Windows operating system. IaaS or .NET is one of the technology which is very popular in terms of development, because it's very easy. It will provide you a lot of good documentation, and that's why people, or maybe developer, you will see like a lot of ASP.NET or .NET people actually, or developer who are out there in the market. That's where the .NET demand is also growing. Similarly, there are a lot of also developers who like to really write into Java, because Java is a open source. Again, it's all depend on the licensing. So in case if I have a Linux operating system, the licensing cost for Linux operating system is uh, kind of like free for some of the operating systems, but some of them like Red Hat and all, they come with the professional licenses. So for that, you definitely need to pay, but that is again cheaper than Windows. Okay. In that case, definitely you will choose that which operating system you want to really go with, and that is how the technologies, or things really goes out. That's a complete decision is all made up. Now once I have this mechanism, what do you think can be a problem with this approach? Anyone? First of all, you with me, guys? Are you following me?
Yes, sir, following.
Perfect. Okay, what do you think is a problem with this approach? What could be the scenario where we can get stuck? I'm talking about the on-premises thing. Just imagine, think through, because once you imagine this one, definitely you will get the broader picture. What could be the problem here? Anyone? Just guess it. It could be right, wrong, doesn't matter.
Come
Do
again.
you think
Come
this is
again,
a good?
please.
Yeah. So what do you think is a problem or could be a limitation for this approach?
I mean about physical mission.
No. So we have one physical machine. Now everything is I have actually deployed. I've created three virtual machine, for example, on this one, and then three operating system, different operating system. I'm running different applications. Everything is good, looking good. But now, what could be the next action, or what could be the challenge, or a problem, or a limitation I can really face with this approach?
See, here we can face this. If we have any issue with physical mission, the complete all whatever applications running on particular mission, EXA host completely will be down, right?
Perfect. Yes, that's the one thing. What else? So in case if my physical server or my hypervisor went down, right? Or some problem
Yes.
with my these two component, definitely everything goes down. That's the one big problem. What else? Because physical server might have problem, right? It's not nothing in the world can have problem. Everything can have problem. What else can be the problem? This is one thing from the availability. And again, talk about this thing in an availability perspective. Say like, and this is what these are the some of the terminologies we need to really sure. First thing, the most problem about this one is the availability.
Exactly.
Let's talk about that. Yeah. So availability of my application.
So in VMware, we do have option
Yes.
called availability HA. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So availability. Now, let's talk about the high level understanding, right? First problem what we have is the availability. We need to ensure that my application is always available. Okay. And then for that one, I need to really ensure that my physical server, in case if door goes down, that could be a problem. Okay. So that's where I need to ensure that my physical server is always secured and available, highly available. Now, what else? What else could be the problem here? I'm talking
So
about if you are running this anywhere, you can run it in your premises, on premises, cloud, doesn't matter. Forget about that one. But say like you have a physical server, but now you are having this thing. Okay, I'll not take more time. Okay, so another problem, guys, will really come. Can you please put up on a mute in case if you're not talking? Thank you. Yeah. So the another problem which we will be having with this option is that scalability. What is this scalability? Okay. Say like for example, tomorrow I have around my I have only 10 users. Now on scenario, what scenario I'm actually using all my users here, right? This is my user and there is also a user. Okay. Okay. And then there is also an application. I'm just putting up here. Everything is running fine. So now all these users are connected with my every application, whatever I have. What happened? I've started creating three applications. Okay. And all these three applications are working fine, no problem. But suddenly there is a problem happen, and that problem is that my user base is growing. That's not a problem, but that's a good thing for me because my application is really become viral. People liking that. Okay, they want to really come to my application. They want to post. They want to do a lot of activities onto that one. So my user base is growing. Earlier, I used to have only 1,000 users. Now my users are like in millions or maybe 10,000 users. But when from 1,000 to 10,000, that means my requirement actually increases 10 times than whatever I used to really create. When I created this application, right, I have only allocated six CPU, 60 GB RAM, okay, 60 GB RAM to this particular system. Now, say like because I was expecting that maybe my application is currently serving 1,000 users, Maximum my growth will be for next 1 month will be 2000. And for that purpose, I have actually created this capacity saying that okay, 6 CPU and 60 GB RAM can really, support 2000 users. Fine, no problem. But suddenly it became 10,000. And because of that 10,000, the demand increases, right? You have a high demand. However, your application, do you think it will support? It will not support. Why? Because you have a high demand and you have a lower capacity. So what will happen? Your users will start seeing problems because your application is not able to support 10,000 users. Okay. Similarly, same thing in case if it happens. So now how can you really expand this one? Because currently you don't have any option or a room to really grow. Okay. It's like you have three rooms. Okay. You have allocated three rooms to three people, and now you don't have a space actually. So what you will do? You will ask another guy, hey, kind of like free up this space because I want more capacity. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna say, hey, do you really require? And then maybe here you can see that this user, initially you have expected that this will grow for 2000 or maybe 1000, but they are not even 100. What you will do? You will reduce the capacity of this one. Okay, so what you're gonna do, you will reduce the capacity, you will take out one CPU out of this one or maybe two CPUs out of this one, and you will increase this to 8 CPUs, and you will also take out the 30 GB out of 30 GB of RAM, and you can actually put up in the 80 GB of RAM. Now why I'm and how can I able to do it in physical server? I cannot do that, but with this hypervisor I'm definitely able to do it, and that's the main advantage. Okay, that's scenario one. That's a scalability option. We can really scale it whenever I want. That is the option which hypervisor is providing. But imagine a scenario where all my applications are really growing. All applications. Every application is growing, and maybe one point of time, consider that my one of the application which is currently having only 110,000, it became like 1 million. It's grown like crazy. People are really liking it. My application grows, and now from 10,000 I got 1 million users. My capacity again requires 10 times. Now do you have a capacity here to grow? Definitely not. You can go maximum of 10 because that's the maximum capacity you can really provide. What should we really do? In that case, you will start adding some more physical servers here. Okay, and then you will expand your hypervisor, and that is the capacity or you can say ability for a hypervisor to really grow according to the physical servers whatever you have. And that is how you will start growing. The more growth you have, okay, you have a more growth, then definitely you will start kind of like growing horizontally. You will start adding more and more physical servers, and your hypervisor is also growing. But this is only in terms of hypervisor. In case if you really want, and then you will really have multiple options, and you will be really adding more and more capacity to your things. Your application is also growing. You will have to scale that application, and application scalability is not a problem. It can really do, you can do some development, you can really perform that particular piece. But now one of the things scalability is taken care about this one. How about the availability? Because here still I have an option that in case if my hypervisor goes down, okay, or maybe availability perspective, I have actually kind of like option wherein in case if one of my physical server goes down, I still have four physical servers which can take care, because that's a capability of your hypervisor which can really take care. But in case if my hypervisor went down, then what will happen? Then again my application goes down. So for that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a parallel system. Okay, parallel system which is a highly available system. That this is what the environment we generally call it as a high available system or a disaster recovery solution. What is disaster recovery? In case if my entire like one setup goes down, I have another setup which is running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a similar kind of like operating system and everything, and I will start having a replication. So everything whatever I have here, they will also get replicated here, and this is what we generally call it as a replication. Okay, and this is one environment and another environment as a DR site, disaster recovery site generally we call it as, right? And this is what main really comes into the picture: availability and the secure scalability. And the another option what we need to really have is a security. Very important, because now once you start having these kind of environments, the one of the advantage what we will be really having is that the security options, you will be start getting the security options with your environment. 1 minute. Sorry. And then we will be having a more secured environment, because now everything whatever you are going here, it will be a kind of like isolated environment, right? You're not having just one environment which can really go the multi environment setup. You can have a higher security with this one. So these three things generally when we talk about, and definitely we will be having a lot more information here, it is really important. So far with me, guys?
Yes,
Hello.
sir.
Perfect. Okay. So now we understood that, okay, how the transformation really happens from the hypervisor and everything, how we really get into the scenario. So when we talked about the platform as a service or a PaaS and IaaS, I think we had discussed about these things. Now, when we are talk about this platform as a service and IaaS, what is going to happen? And this was the bigger change for any company, because the more availability and scalability is really required, the higher cost a company needs to really upfront first of all put up and then pay on a monthly basis. So to avoid this one, this is what cloud computing really replaces, right? So you have a cloud computing which is really taking care about this part. So your Azure is taking care about all these things. You don't have to really worry. From where you have to really start worrying is that this particular component. So you have to start creating this virtual machine, and this is what the advantage of cloud, that cloud is now allowing you to directly create a virtual machine in the cloud. And this is something which you have outsourced. And the again, the another thing is it will automatically taken care about your availability of your underlying hardware, the scalability of your underlying hardware, and the security of your underlying hardware, and the operating system, the hypervisor. You don't have to worry about it, because you can imagine, right? First of all, the hardware, the maintenance of that hardware. The second thing is a hypervisor, which is a very big cost. VMware is very, very costly. Okay, so that's where they are completely getting eliminated by these two costs. Now, once I have a virtual machine, as I can see here, virtual machine is really something which we will be starting with. So if I have a virtual machine here, okay, now every virtual machine has few components. What are those components? Let's talk about that. First component is something which we call it as a compute. What is compute? Compute is nothing but CPU and memory, or a RAM. CPU and RAM, processor and RAM, right? As I mentioned. This is one thing. Now, what happens when you are going to create a virtual machine inside your Azure? Okay, because Azure is something which we are learning, or a cloud, whenever you talk about. What they did actually, they created a predefined templates for this compute. Okay? And these templates, they also generally got called it as a t-shirt sizes or whatever you call it as, but we are talking about instance type. Okay, this is the terminology which they actually use, because they are actually asking you that, hey, provide me what kind of a configuration requirement you have. Based on that, I will provide you the instance type. Say like I have just one requirement with two CPU, two CPU, and maybe 8 GB of RAM. This is my requirement. Okay, it's a fine, no problem. For this configuration, I have one template, okay, which you can use, and then template name of that template is something like, maybe I can say C1, select C2, for example, C1 or D1, C2, or D1 V2 V1, for example. So D1 is my a series name and the version of that particular thing. So series 1 and this is one. If you choose this instance type, okay, you will get this configuration. And like this way, they have hundreds of configuration, because my configuration requirement can be different. I want 2 GB of 2 CPU, or maybe 1 CPU with 4 GB RAM. I want 6 GB, 6 CPU with 12 GB of RAM. I want 4 CPU with 100 GB of RAM. Now this all depends on the configuration, is depend on your application requirement. Some of the applications are CPU intensive. Some of the applications are memory intensive. Okay, some of the applications read balance, like they are CPU as well as the memory intensive. So what you need to really do is you need to understand that which kind of application requirement you have, and based on that, because eventually you are going to deploy your application onto that virtual machine, right? So you need to understand that one. Now, one more advantage of having this cloud computing is that maybe upfront, I don't know, because this is the scenario which I talked about, right? Initially, when I started, I had only requirement about a very small system, because I was expecting that only 1,000 user will be accessing my application. Maybe it might grow to 2,000. That can also be get applied in my scenario, in my cloud scenario. This is also quite possible, right? That I can start with CPU, but tomorrow, in case if my demands grows, then what will happen? Cloud actually will provide you the option to ensure that the scalability is there. So in case if tomorrow you have an option, you can actually grow this, or you can choose another instance type. Okay, and then you can just attach that instance type to your virtual machine, as simple as that. Now, because this is a separate component, it doesn't really worry about which operating system or which application you are really running, because it's just changing the underlying hardware. It's not impacting, or say like I have created D2 v1 here, for example, right? This is my D2 v1 here, and which has a higher capacity, 4 CPU RAM, 16 GB, 4 CPU and 16 GB of RAM. That's my capacity for this configuration, the higher configuration, right? So I can first select this one. Apart from that, and as I mentioned, right, it will not have an impact. Why? Because there is another component of virtual machine which is completely separate, and which is allowing you to really choose the operating system which you want. So this is a separate component. Virtual machine is built by multiple components, and one of the very important component is, first of all, is your instance type. The second component is the system, that which operating system you really want to do. And this is again, because as I mentioned, this is detached with your underlying hardware. Okay, it will ensure that in case if we have deployed any application on top of this one, okay, application on top of this one, it will not get impacted, because you want to now change your instance type. Only thing is you will have to shut this down once. Only one time shutdown is required, but then you will not have any problem with your thing, because this will get converted as an image, and then that image will automatically get deployed in your virtual machine. So it will taken care here. No worry about this one. Apart from this, so far with me, guys, any questions? Are you following me? Does this make sense?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. Now, when we talk about the other component, the other component is definitely the important thing, network. How are you going to connect to your application? Without a network, you cannot really do that. Or before this network, I also have one more component which is also important. That is my disk storage, right? Virtual machine also required a storage where my operating system will store a data. And why I'm actually keeping this separate, or why they kept it separate, because as I mentioned, right, in case if I want to make a change to my storage account, to my instance type, what it will do, it is asking me to shut down. Now that means the moment I shut down this instance, it will automatically copy everything, all the status whatever I have, into my disk. And this is a persistent disk. This disk will not get deleted, and this is a separate component. So even if you delete your virtual machine, okay, this disk will not get deleted, because this is just a logical binding of your components. That's it. There is no virtual machine as such. It's all about either you have an operating system on top of this because you are deploying, and there is a disk here. But when you are deleting this one, right, or shutting down, that means all your state will go here. And the next time when you start this virtual machine, okay, it will read everything from the disk and then will start your application. So that is why storage is also very important. This is separate component. Now then there is a next component is network. This application is deployed here, but it's very important that how you interact with your application, and the only interaction what I have is using a website. Now when I talk about website, what is a website, right? It's a domain, correct? Whatever I'm talking about is a domain like facebook.com or whatever instagram.com. This is all domain. Now domain actually goes with something like a domain naming service, DNS. What is this domain naming service? Generally what happens, as we all understand, networks really works on a layer, something like a IP address. What is this IP address? We will get more detailed discussion about this when we go into the network component of this one. But imagine a IP address is an address which is given to your network, okay, and it's a unique address which is kind of like can provide it to your domain. Generally, in case if I ask you that okay, your Facebook address is something like 200.215.220.268. If I ask you that okay, remember this address, and then whenever you want to put up this whenever you want to really access facebook.com, okay, you have to put up, instead of facebook.com, you have to put up this address. Which is easier for you to remember, IP address or the facebook.com? Obviously facebook.com. As a human, we always go for a easier things, easier tasks, and it is again very important for us because I cannot, maybe I can have only facebook.com, but I can have yahoo.com, google.com. I actually can remember how 100 email, 100 websites, and maybe more than that, more than 100 emails or website actually which I remember. But if I ask you to remember two IP addresses or three IP addresses, maybe a very high level person can really remember 10 or maybe 15, not more than that, because we cannot really remember all these IP addresses because these are numbers we cannot understand. Who understand that? Computer understand that. Okay, computer can really understand that okay, this is address, but again, computer cannot remember that. It needs to really keep that address somewhere, and where that address actually will get stored, that address will get stored at your DNS. So this DNS is just a mapping between your name, domain name, to your IP address. As simple as that. So in case if a user really hits to a domain, okay, a user really hits to a domain, they go for facebook.com, then this facebook.com really send this request to DNS. Why? Because it needs to it needs to connect to this IP address. Domain cannot really connect like this one. So domain will go to facebook.com, the DNS. DNS will then say, hey, you want to go to facebook.com, go to this IP address. This is just a list. It's a simple list actually which is provided by these things. Just a mapping. And this is again unique. You cannot have this this IP address attached to any other thing. There is a control body actually, and there is again a very restricted things which you can really go with. So you can map it with this one. Your domain will forward your request to this network. This network will forward your request to this application, and then will revert all the information. But at the user level, user will never see this IP address, at least in the browser. But in case if you go to any other setup, for example, if I click here and if I open a command prompt, let me show you. Okay, and if I type here ping something, ping www.facebook.com. Okay, this is the IP address. Now what is this ping? Ping is a service which will give me the IP address of my whatever the website which I'm trying to do. Say like in case if I want to do the same thing for Instagram, this will have a different IP address. Okay, this is having a different IP address, but again they are actually attached with one. Why? Can you see here? Because Instagram and Facebook are the same companies. They owned by one same company. Okay. If I type something like a whatsapp.com, sorry, this is different. Even though it's again owned by that one, they might be having a different, because this is again was actually done by different company, but now this is different company, and I can go on so on. And these are the IP addresses which are attached. Now this ping, what is it doing? It is going to the DNS server, and it is asking that DNS server, hey, show, first of all, show me that what is the IP address of this, whether I'm able to really connect to this particular facebook.com or not. Okay, as a user, am I able to open connect to this one? This is just a validation, whether you are able to connect. But this, apart from this validation, it is also providing you the IP address of that one. Okay, because it is trying to ping to this IP address, not just facebook.com. Okay, so this is how things really works out. When we talk about the application, we are going to have four components here as we discuss. So far with me, guys? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're with you.
Yes, perfect. Okay, now there one more thing I want to really touch base, and then we will jump into the actual window and see how we go with, or two things rather we will go with. Now once we have that network thing, first of all we have to ensure that who can really connect to my IP addresses. And every IP address will have two options. The first option is again just the IP address which I'm talking about, but there is a concept like a ports. Okay, now when you talk about ports, these ports are something which is different for different application. Say like if I want to connect to my application using HTTP. HTTP is a protocol, okay, which generally we use, and then that is matched with your ports. This HTTP is, our HTTPS is the protocol, or can say a port which is used to connect to your web application. And inside your virtual machine you can have hundreds, thousands of applications which can really work on different ports. So your SMTP, your mail works on a different port. Your TC, your DNS communication works on a different port. Your HTTP works on a different port. Your FTP services works on a different port. So we have approximately 65,000 ports, which can be 65,000 ports, which plus actually ports which can be mapped with one IP address. Because in my application I have hundreds of in my virtual machine I can have hundreds of applications which can really run on, and every application I can give a different port and can access that on a different port. But generally we go with only HTTP port, because that's where we want my application to be accessed using my HTTP one. But again, apart from that, okay, this is one HTTP port, but apart from that there is one more port which is required, TP or HTTPS. Okay, one more which is required, that is your RDP port or SSH port. Now, what is this RDP and SSH? Look, as a user, as I mentioned, right, as a user you are connecting to my application, but as a user you are connecting to my application, but as a developer, or sorry, DevOps person, right, I want to connect to my operating system so I can manage my application. So to connect to my operating system, I need to really use something like a RDP or SSH. Two protocols actually I can use to connect, and these protocols are depend on which operating system you are using. Say like if you are using Windows, then you will go with RDP. If you are using Linux, then you will go for SSH, secure shell. Okay, RDP doesn't work with Linux, just one thing. Okay, now, and this is where we'll have to allow. So when I talk about that, okay, when I'm talking about this networking, in this scenario, that to allow this thing, whether I can really keep it like here, because everybody is coming through what? Everybody is coming through my network only, right? When I say I want to really connect to my application to using RDP, that means I have to connect to my IP address, and from that IP address only I can really connect using these options. So this RDP is here, and this S is say like already there, but I'm just putting up like this. So here is HTTP, for example. So I have two protocols. I have one protocol is for RDP and one protocol for HTTP. Here I should really have one. Again, in case if I just allow it, definitely it will not work out. There is one service which is there here, and that service is a network security group, NSG, NSG commandos. Okay, network security group is a layer between your actual network and the external access. So whatever you allow here, that is the only thing which will get allowed to the external people. In case if someone is trying to connect using different protocol, say like I have a different protocol which is FTP. Okay, this is also one of the protocol which is popular. In case if I want to connect to this one, in case if I disallowed this one, and if I only allowed these two, then only I will be able, otherwise I will not be able to connect. So 2 is something which I made it green in my NSG network security group, wherein FTP is red, is not allowed. By default, everything is kind of like denied. In a cloud environment, whenever you talk about the network security, network access, everything by default is denied. You have to explicitly mention that yes, I want to really enable this one. Okay, so I think the theory part is good, which is very important. You should really understand this one, otherwise things really not go well. Let's start with creating a 1 minute our virtual machine. For that, what you need to do, you need to go to the portal.azure.com. That's your place. That's where the thing will start. And you have to focus on all these components, right? I will tell you that what are all those components which we are really sitting here. Okay, where can we really start? So if you see, we started with Microsoft Enter ID, then we went into something like a storage account. Now we have to go to a virtual machine. Now these are the core services which are always on top whenever you go for. In case if you want to really search, you can also search it here. So you can just type virtual, and it will automatically show you the virtual machine here. Let's click here. Okay, let's click on create virtual machine. Okay, now the first thing what you have to do is you have to click on subscriptions. Okay, you have to select the subscription whatever you have. If you have multiple subscription, you can really select multiple subscription here, but currently I have just one application, one subscription. We can select the one subscription. Second, we need to really select the resource group. If you want, you can create your own resource group. So let's click on create here, and we'll say RG, that's the name I'm going to do, VM testing. I'm going to create a new virtual machine. Okay, now here I need to give a name for that virtual machine. So my name will always start with VM, say like VRIT test -01. That's my virtual machine name. Now region, where you want this virtual machine to be placed. And as we discussed, right, it should be always a nearby location. What is my nearby location? Say like if I go back, I can just type India and I can type say like South India, nearby location. Availability zones, by default, everything it will take it. Fine, no problem. I don't really care about that one. Now here the things interesting starts. I want to really create a Windows 10 here. This is my the first thing image, right? Operating system. Which operating system or image I should really use? I have hundreds of options here. If you go see all the images, you can see bunch of them, like there are a lot of images actually which are really available. These are the popular one they are really showing here, and you can see the versions also. You can have 2022 data center, Azure edition, data center normal, 16, 10 Pro, 11 Pro, Ubuntu, bunch of them, SUSE, Red Hat, Oracle, lot of whatever you want, you can really choose this from this one. Okay, I'm going to choose the 10 Pro because I want to create my Windows 10 virtual machine inside my Azure account. And this is only possible in Azure. You cannot create Windows 10 in any other any other you know any other cloud computing like AWS, Google Cloud. They will not really provide. They only provide only limited Windows servers. Okay, architecture 86 is fine. Now I want to select the size here, and if you can see, I have also a bunch of different sizes. If I click on see all sizes, it will show me all the sizes which are really available here. So I can see there are multiple things like as I mentioned, right? This is DS V1 version 2. Now what is this? This is a type which is general. It is giving me one CPU. You can see one CPU, RAM, disk, maximum IOs, local disk, premium disk, cost. Everything is visible here. And based on your requirement and based on the cost, you have to really select. Say like if I select this one, I will get one CPU, 3.5 GB of RAM, which is very low. If you ask me, it's very low. But again, it can really serve the purpose. Disk, you will get four. Okay. Uh, the capacity, the 7 GB only you will be get created, supported, and then the cost of this will be 4,000 rupees per month. Now, the very good option about cloud is that in case if I create this virtual machine, do I need to pay 4,000 even though if I'm not using this one? No. This cost will be again get divided into the hourly rates. So say like in case if you create this instance and it will show you the hourly rate for this one. This is a again it's not like you will get this much only. You might get lower or maybe a higher cost. This is the approximate cost actually which is giving you. This is approximate cost. This is not actual cost. Okay, this is approximate cost. So if you choose this one, if you run this for full 1 month, you may get nearby to this cost. That is the kind of like assumption. If you select this one, right, V8S31, I'm going to get 8 CPUs and 32 GB of RAM. Okay, disk, I can allow 16 GB, 16 disk, and 64 GB of kind of like data which I can really go with. Sorry, but the cost of that one is 31,000. Okay, I can choose it any version, and there are a bunch of series here, right? You can go for D series, E series, F series, multiple series, whatever. It's again depend on what kind of a configuration you really need. Okay, like I go with a general purpose which is a lower one. I will select only B2, so I need only two CPUs, 4 GB of RAM, and disk is fine. I'm going with the 8SC, that's fine. And I have to also attach because this is giving me an option to really attach that one. I can get that. 3,000 rupees is a monthly cost which I'm going to get. And as I mentioned, if I use this for just 1 hour, I will get cost only for 1 hour. And that will it will show you me how much cost it will take hourly basis. I'm going to select this. Fine. Now with this one, there's one more thing which I actually missed in my older thing here is that one thing from the networking perspective is to really allow 1 minute, sorry. Come on. Okay. So as I mentioned that RDP is from the network side. However, after you are log into this one, I also need to provide you RDP access so you can actually log into my operating system. And that login option only provided by username and a password. Okay, which is very important. So from the networking perspective, fine. At the protocol level, you are allowed or blocked. But once you are allowed, even after that, you need to really provide the operating system to connect to my, you need to provide username and a password to connect to my operating system. Otherwise, you will not be allowed. So you have to also create this username and a password and attach that to the operating system. This is what the step which we are going to do here. So I'm going to mention something like a VRIT admin, and then I'm going to provide a password. That password should be secure and 12 letters long. So I'm just putting some password here, and you have to keep it very, very secure. Should not give it to anyone. And now here is a NSG. This is your network security group. By default, because it is having this option, it is allowing you to 3389, which is RDP port. This 3389 is a port number and RDP is a name of that port. So you can again remember that which port you want to enable. So here I can have four options. I can actually add more options here, no problem. But here in this UI, it only allows you to these four. So you can go either HTTP and SSH or RDP. Because we are going with Windows, it automatically understands that I've selected image as a Windows 10. It's giving me an option for RDP. Okay. If I have selected the Ubuntu one, it automatically selected the SSH. Fine. I'm using two options here and I confirm that yes, I am eligible for Windows 10 licenses to run in a multi environment. Perfect. I can click here. Now you can see all these options. Basic thing, it asks me for configuration like compute, the network thing, and the username password. Now it is asking me, do you want to really attach any disk here? Yes, there is a disk attached which I want to really create. So this is the disk which is actually asking me. For the disk also, I can have a number of options. I can go up to 2 terabyte, but I don't really require that much. I can go with 127, which is image default, which is automatically coming with my image. I can go again a premium quality, standard SSD, standard HDD, and this is all about your application, what kind of a requirement you have. The higher performance you really need, you should go with premium SSD. If you know that no, my application is, because this is Windows 10, I'm not going to install any application on top of this one, so I can really get with the standard SSD. Now with this standard premium SSD, if they are asking you 100 rupees, your standard SSD will cost you somewhere around 60 rupees, 40% discount. If you go again HDD, okay, the cost will either further go with like maybe 10 rupees or 20
Your
rupees,
screen
like that.
screen
It's
share
all
is
about how
stopped.
the performance you really want to. Screen sharing is stop, sorry.
Yeah.
Mm, let me. Can you see my screen now?
No.
Hello?
Yeah, we can see now.
No. Just a minute. Can you see it now?
Mm.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, perfect. Okay. Sorry for this one. I'll have to fix my laptop. Okay. So now you can see that we have to select the image, and I'm going to select the stuff here, the standard HDD here. Next thing is a networking thing. Now, as I mentioned, when you talk about the networking component, there is two things which is really by default provided to you. One is network
It's not.
card, okay, because you can see that your laptop will also. Hello?
Yeah,
It
your
stopped
screen.
It's
again,
not
sir.
coming?
Yeah,
Not yet?
it started and again
Now,
stopped.
now? Hello?
Mm. No.
Okay, RK, better we start tomorrow.
Started and stop. Okay. Okay, no problem. We'll start tomorrow. I'll get that in done, and we'll start it from there. Okay. Okay, guys.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, guys. Bye.